Usually, learning a language feels like staring at the side of a mountain made entirely of dictionaries.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally overwhelming.
Right. You get this overwhelming sense that you need to memorize like 10,000 complex, multi-syllable words and force all the grammar rules to line up perfectly in your head.
Yeah, and only then can you open your mouth and expect to sound remotely fluent.
Exactly. But what if the secret to sounding like a native speaker isn't about knowing more words?
That is the million-dollar question.
What if it's actually about knowing how to use a tiny, almost invisible handful of everyday words to, completely manipulate the flow and feeling of a conversation?
I love that framing.
And welcome back to Talkmaster English Channel.
Today's deep dive is going to completely flip the traditional language learning script on its head.
It really is, and it's incredibly comforting to realize that fluency is rarely about having like a PhD-level vocabulary.
Yeah, we tend to overcomplicate things so much.
We really do. We assume we need to sound like a printed textbook, carefully pronouncing every single syllable of some obscure adjective.
But that's not how real people talk at all.
Exactly. If you actually listen to native speakers in the wild, like at a coffee shop or in a boardroom or just standing at a bus stop, they are navigating their entire day using a very specific, surprisingly simple set of tools.
They aren't throwing a thesaurus at each other.
Right. They are using functional, highly versatile vocabulary to signal their intentions, soften their criticisms, and steer the dialogue.
Which brings us perfectly to the source material we are unpacking today.
Yeah.
We've pulled insights from this really practical breakdown created by the instructors over at Mr. English Channel.
Emily and Paul, right?
Yes, Emily and Paul. And their session is specifically focused on the everyday English words you absolutely must know to speak like a native.
And what makes their approach so refreshing is that they don't treat vocabulary like a spelling bee.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, they treat it like a toolkit. They actually call these words little keys that unlock smoother, more supernatural-sounding conversations.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really figure out the hidden mechanics of these keys. We aren't going to give you dry textbook definitions.
No, you probably already know what these words mean on paper.
Exactly. We are going to look at how they function in the real world.
Because knowing the dictionary definition of a word is entirely different from knowing its cultural weight or its emotional temperature.
Right, or the exact tone of voice required to use it without accidentally offending someone.
Totally. These little keys are the invisible architecture of native speech. And to truly understand them, we have to look at them in their natural habitats.
We need to see how they change, depending on whether you are sitting in a corporate office, hanging out with your friends, arguing with your roommate, or like just navigating a busy city street.
It changes everything.
So let's jump right into the deep end. We have to start where the stakes for clearer communication are arguably the highest.
The workplace.
Yeah, the professional arena. This is where you as a listener and maybe a non-native speaker probably feel the most intense pressure not to mess up.
The modern workplace is a fascinating linguistic environment because it is governed by a very strict, often unspoken set of rules about politeness and hierarchy.
Yes, exactly.
Misunderstandings here don't just result in an awkward silence. I mean, they can have tangible consequences for your career or your team's productivity or even a major project.
Definitely. And our source material highlights a very specific cluster of words designed to help you survive this environment.
Right. Words like actually, probably, kind of, sort of, deal with, and schedule.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with actually, on the surface, it seems so basic.
Super basic.
It's a word you use to state a reality or a fact. But the instructors in our source note that native speakers constantly use it for gentle correction.
Yes, that is such a crucial distinction.
They give this example of looking out the window and saying, I thought it was raining, but actually it's sunny. They describe it as adding a nice nuance. But I want to dig deeper into that nuance. Like, why do we need it? Why can't I just say, you are wrong, it is sunny?
Because in many professional cultures, particularly within English-speaking corporate environments, directness is often perceived as a threat.
Wow, a threat.
Yeah, it can be interpreted as aggressive or confrontational or dismissive. If a colleague says, the meeting is at 2 p.m. and you reply, no, it is at 3 p.m., you have communicated the fact, but you have also just delivered a tiny blunt force blow to their ego.
Ouch. Yeah, that makes sense.
You've essentially announced to the entire room that they made a mistake.
Which immediately makes them defensive.
Precisely. They stop listening to the information and start reacting to the embarrassment.
Yeah.
And this is where it actually comes in as a conversational shock absorber.
A shock absorber. I like that.
If you say, I thought it was at 2, but actually I think it's at 3, you completely change the dynamic. You are taking on some of the confusion yourself.
By saying, I thought.
Right. You say, I thought, and then you use actually to gracefully pivot reality. You aren't making them feel stupid. You're simply introducing new information.
It protects the working relationship while still getting the fact correct.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to push back on this because actually it can be incredibly dangerous if you use it wrong.
Oh, for sure. How so?
Well, think about the stereotypical, actually guy in a meeting. You know exactly who I mean, right?
Oh, unfortunately, yes. We all know that guy.
Right. Someone presents an idea and he leans back, crosses his arms and says, well, actually, if you look at the Q3 numbers,
The worst.
it doesn't sound like a gentle shock absorber at all. It sounds condescending. It sounds like he thinks he's the smartest person in the room.
That is a brilliant observation, and it highlights the hidden mechanic of tone. The word itself is just a tool, but the tone is how you swing the hammer.
Yeah.
When actually is used as a gentle correction, the native speaker will usually soften their voice, maybe raise the pitch slightly at the end of the sentence, and speed through the word.
Oh, actually, it's at 3. Like that.
Exactly. It's light, it's breezy, but actually Guy does the exact opposite. He elongates the word. He emphasizes the first syllable. Well, essentially.
He drops his pitch.
Right. And by stressing the word, he is weaponizing the correction. He is drawing maximum attention to the fact that you are wrong and he is right.
So for the listener trying to master this, the rule isn't just to use the word.
No, it's to use the word quickly and lightly.
Tone is everything. You have to keep it breezy. And I think that brings us to the next set of softening tools from the source. Kind of, sort of, and probably.
Yes, the hedge words.
The source points out that we use these to describe feelings or situations without being too strong, saying I'm kind of tired instead of I am tired.
Right.
Or I'll probably finish this later.
Right.
But I totally understand the idea of softening a blow. But if I'm at work and I need to be seen as highly productive and competent, doesn't using hedge words like kind of or probably make me sound unconfident?
That's a really valid concern.
If my boss asks when the report will be done, and I say I'll probably finish it later, they might just hear that I have no control over my own schedule. Doesn't this ruin workplace efficiency?
Well, it raises a fundamental question about what efficiency actually means when you are working with other human beings.
What do you mean?
We often mistake absolute bluntness for efficiency, but a collaborative environment requires long-term relationship maintenance. Let's look at your example.
Okay.
If your boss asks for the report and you say, I cannot do it right now, I am busy, that is highly efficient information transfer.
Sure, it gets the point across.
But it's a brick wall. It shuts down the interaction and leaves your boss frustrated.
It sounds like a rejection.
It is a rejection. Now replace it with the softer tools. I'm kind of swamped with the marketing data right now, but I will probably have the report to you by the end of the day.
I see the difference.
You are communicating the exact same logistical reality. You are busy, and they aren't getting the report this second. But the psychological impact is entirely different.
Because kind of swamped signals that you are working hard.
Exactly, but it softens the complaint so you don't sound like you're whining. And probably gives you a buffer. It manages their expectations without giving them a hard deadline you might miss.
You aren't being a roadblock, you are negotiating reality.
That is a perfect way to put it.
So you are communicating a delay without creating a crisis. It's almost like you are protecting the peace of the office.
Precisely.
But you can't just soften things all day. Eventually, work has to get done.
Which is exactly why native speakers instinctively pivot from these soft, indirect words straight into hard action verbs.
Oh, to transition from soft to hard skills.
Right. Once the relationship is secure and the ego is protected, the language shifts. This is where the source brings in phrases like deal with and schedule.
I found this transition fascinating. The instructors define deal with as managing a situation or a problem, like having to deal with a lot of emails or deal with customer complaints.
Yeah.
And schedule is the noun for your plan or agenda, but also the verb for placing something on that agenda.
Let's look at the hidden nuance of deal with versus a word like manage.
Okay.
You manage a project, you manage a team. Manage sounds clean and clinical, but you deal with a problem.
Deal with. It feels heavier.
It does. Deal with carries a subtle implication of burden. It implies that the task is slightly annoying, chaotic, or difficult, but you are competent enough to handle it anyway.
Oh, wow.
When you tell a coworker, "Don't worry, I'll deal with the angry client," you aren't just saying you will talk to them. You are signaling solidarity.
You are taking the burden off their shoulders.
You are saying, "I know this is unpleasant, but I am handling it for us."
That is such a powerful distinction. It builds instant camaraderie. You are taking a bullet for the team.
Exactly. It's a sophisticated 1-2 punch. You use actually and kind of to navigate the human emotions smoothly, and then you drop a strong deal with to take absolute control of the problem.
You move from abstract nuance into concrete productivity. Okay, so we just saw how words like actually and kind of protect people's egos at work, where everyone is a little defensive. But what happens when we leave the office?
A completely different ballgame.
Right. When we talk to our friends, the goal isn't protecting egos or optimizing workflow. It's protecting the momentum of the conversation itself.
Yeah, keeping the flow going.
If a story gets derailed, how do native speakers pull it back on track without making it awkward? This brings us to the social sphere and the words that act as the glue for everyday interactions.
The mechanics of casual conversation are wildly different from professional dialogue. Casual conversation is unpredictable. It wanders.
People interrupt, they remember random details, they get distracted.
Exactly. And without specific navigational words, a casual chat would collapse into chaos or just awkward silences. Our source gives us a fantastic toolkit for steering these interactions.
Words like guess what, by the way. Anyway, and the phrase I mean.
Let's look at how we launch a conversation. The source mentions guess what as a tool for sharing exciting news or grabbing attention. Like, guess what? I got a new job.
But it's more than just an announcement, isn't it? It feels like a psychological trick.
It absolutely is a psychological trick. It leverages the human brain's inability to ignore a curiosity gap.
A curiosity gap, right?
When you say, I got a new job, you are just delivering a statement. The listener can just nod and say, cool.
Yeah, very passive.
But when you start with, guess what? You are issuing a direct command. You are turning the listener from a passive audience member into an active participant.
They're socially obligated to lean in, widen their eyes, and say, what?
Exactly. You've artificially manufactured suspense. It is the conversational equivalent of a drum roll.
It forces engagement. I love that. But once you have their attention, the conversation rarely goes in a straight line.
Never.
This is where my favorite part of the source material comes in. The instructors explain the relationship between by the way and anyway.
So crucial.
They describe by the way as a tool for changing the topic slightly or adding extra information. Anyway, is for getting back to the main point.
They are directional signals. They were literally the steering wheel of the dialogue.
Yeah, think of a conversation like driving a car on a massive road trip with a friend. You are cruising down the highway, talking about a movie you just saw.
Okay, I'm with you.
Suddenly, out the window, you see a billboard that reminds you of something completely unrelated but highly urgent. You can't just yank the steering wheel and drive off the road. That's jarring and confusing.
It causes a conversational crash.
Right. You need to take a smooth, intentional exit. That is what By the Way does. You are talking about the movie, and then you say, oh, by the way, did you remember to feed the cat?
It gives you permission to take a scenic detour.
Yes. But you can't stay on the detour forever. Once the cat situation is resolved, you are stuck on a side street. You need to get back to the movie.
And here comes the GPS.
That is what Anyway is. Anyway is the conversational GPS, politely recalculating your route and merging you back onto the highway. Anyway, so the ending of the movie was crazy.
That analogy perfectly captures the momentum of native speech.
Thank you.
And what's fascinating here is, well, what's crucial to understand about Anyway is the tone drop. Just like actually tone dictates the function.
Oh, tell me more about that.
When a native speaker uses Anyway to return to a topic, they usually take a small breath, sigh slightly, and drop the pitch of their voice on the first syllable. Anyway,
Oh yeah, you can hear the sigh.
that physical sigh signals to the listener that the detour is officially closed. But there is a secondary, highly specific use for Anyway that the source points out, which is pure social genius.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
It is used to end a phone call.
Yes. The instructors note that you can just say, anyway, I have to go now,
Yeah.
which solves one of the most terrifying human experiences, trying to figure out how to hang up the phone without sounding like a jerk.
Ending a conversation is socially perilous. You don't want the other person to think you are bored of them.
No, of course not.
If there is a lull in the conversation and you just say, okay, I'm hanging up, it feels incredibly abrupt. It feels like a rejection.
It's basically hanging up in their face.
Exactly. But when you deploy anyway, usually accompanied by that same subtle sigh or stretching of the vowel, you are signaling that the natural lifespan of the conversation has been reached.
You're acknowledging that all the relevant topics have been covered.
Right. It fulfills the social contract, gives the other person a moment to prepare for the goodbye, and allows both of you to disengage with your dignity intact.
It's an absolute lifesaver. Now, we also need to talk about real-time self-editing.
Yes.
The source brings back our old friend, actually, for polite preference correction. Like someone offers you coffee and you say, actually, I prefer tea.
Very common.
But then they introduce the phrase, I mean. They say it's used to explain yourself better, to clarify, or to soften a harsh thought. The example given is, the movie was terrible. I mean, wasn't my favorite.
This is perhaps the most advanced native level skill in the entire toolkit. The backpedal.
The backpedal, yes.
When you are speaking a second language, you are often translating on the fly, and sometimes the words that come out of your mouth are much harsher or more absolute than you intended.
That happens to everyone.
You say, the movie was terrible, but the moment the words hang in the air, you see the other person's face fall. You suddenly realize they might have loved that movie, or maybe their brother directed it.
You have committed a massive social faux pas.
You are standing on a conversational landmine.
And, I mean, is how you defuse the landmine before it explodes.
Exactly. It buys you 3 seconds to completely rewrite history. You instantly deploy. It just wasn't my favorite style of film.
That's so smooth.
You haven't contradicted yourself entirely. You still didn't like the movie, but you have shifted the blame from the movie being objectively bad to your subjective taste being different.
It shows immense emotional intelligence.
It tells the listener, I am actively monitoring your reaction to my words, and I care enough about your feelings to adjust my stance in real time.
You get to be the rough draft and the polished, diplomatic final draft all in the same breath.
Beautifully said.
So we've navigated the office, we've steered the social flow with our friends. Now we are following you, the listener, home. We are entering the domestic sphere.
A very different environment.
Yeah, and here the language naturally shifts away from managing other people's feelings and focuses heavily on managing our physical environment.
The environment dictates the vocabulary. In the home, we aren't worried about corporate hierarchy or conversational detours. We are worried about basic survival and maintenance.
Right.
The source highlights 3 incredibly common, highly tangible words for this space: leftovers, messy, and fix.
Now, you might be thinking, I know what a leftover is. It's food.
Sure, that's the dictionary definition.
Yes, but I don't want to talk about dictionary definitions. I want to talk about the nuance of these English labels. Why do native speakers have a specific celebrated noun for the food we didn't finish yesterday? Why not just call it the rest of the chicken?
Because in English-speaking cultures, particularly in North America, the concept of leftovers is deeply tied to efficiency, economics, and meal prep culture.
It's an institution.
It really is an institution. When the instructors in our source talk about leftovers, they explicitly point out the benefit you don't have to cook again.
Right, they highlight the time saved.
Leftovers aren't viewed as scraps or garbage. They are a victory over the daily grind. They represent time saved. When a native speaker opens the fridge and says, oh great, we have leftovers, there is genuine relief in their voice.
They have reclaimed an hour of their evening.
Exactly.
It's the vocabulary of roommate survival. Which brings us to the next reality of domestic life things get chaotic. The source gives us the word messy.
Oh, mess.
They describe it as things out of place, not clean, clothes on the floor. But we need to make a crucial distinction here for the listener. What is the difference between a room being messy and a room being dirty?
That is a vital distinction because non-native speakers often mix these up and it completely changes what you are communicating.
Exactly. So what's the difference?
Dirty implies grime, bacteria, or a need for sanitation. If a dog tracks mud all over the kitchen floor, the floor is dirty, you need a mop and soap.
Right.
Messy, on the other hand, is entirely about disorganization and visual chaos. A teenager's bedroom with clean clothes piled on the chair, textbooks scattered across the desk, and a guitar lying on the bed is extremely messy.
But it might not be dirty.
Right. You don't need bleach for a messy room. You just need to put things in boxes.
Exactly. Messy is the inevitable byproduct of living an active life inside a confined space.
It's the visual evidence of your daily routine.
But obviously, you can't let the clutter take over completely, nor can you allow the physical structure of your home to deteriorate. Which leads us to the final word in this domestic triad, fix.
Fix?
The source notes that fix means to repair something broken, to make it work again. Fixing a sink, fixing a computer. But why fix? Why don't native speakers walk around their houses saying, I need to repair the sink or I need to restore the light bulb?
It comes down to the register of the language, the level of formality. Repair and restore belong to a formal, almost professional register.
Oh, that makes sense.
You hire a mechanic to repair your car's transmission, a museum restores a painting, but fix is the ultimate casual, blue-collar, roll-up-your-sleeves utility verb.
It implies a quick, practical solution.
It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to work. You use duct tape to fix a leaky pipe until the plumber gets there.
You can even use it for abstract things. You can fix a typo in a document. You can even fix a bad mood by eating a good meal.
Precisely. It is the universal verb for pushing back against the breakdown of daily life. So when you look at these three words together, leftovers, messy, and fix, they aren't just random vocabulary terms.
They describe the continuous loop of domestic existence.
Yes. You cook a massive meal, which makes the kitchen incredibly messy. You eat the leftovers for the next 2 days to save time, and while you are doing that, you realize you need to fix the hinge on the refrigerator door.
It's the circle of life inside your apartment.
It really is.
Now, just as we maintain the physical boundaries and functions of our actual homes, we all inhabit a second, very modern extension of our living space.
Ah, our virtual homes.
Yes, our devices, our social media accounts, our inboxes. And navigating this space requires transitioning from physical vocabulary to digital vocabulary.
The digital landscape is an environment just as real and consequential as your office or your living room. But because it doesn't physically exist, the English language had to adapt older concepts to describe new behaviors. The source gives us 4 fundamental actions: log in and log out, scroll and upload and download.
Let's start with scroll. The instructors define it as moving text or images up or down on a screen. But the history of that word is wild.
It's fascinating.
A scroll used to be a physical roll of parchment paper, right? Kings and town criers used scrolls. How did it become the dominant verb for looking at Instagram?
It's a perfect example of how language maps physical concepts onto a flat, 2-dimensional screen to help our brains understand what is happening.
Okay, map that out for me.
When early computer interfaces were designed, they needed a way to display documents that were longer than the monitor. The movement of the text moving vertically up the screen mimicked the physical unrolling of an ancient parchment scroll, hence scrolling.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
But today, the nuance has evolved. We talk about the infinite scroll. It implies a never-ending vertical journey through an absolute avalanche of digital information.
Yeah, an avalanche is the right word.
When you tell someone, I was just scrolling on my phone, it implies a passive, almost hypnotic state. You aren't actively searching for anything. You are just letting the digital landscape wash over you.
It really does feel like you are traveling down a long, endless highway. And speaking of boundaries and travel in the digital world, let's look at log in and log out.
A very different vibe.
The instructors note that you log in to get access and you log out for security. I want the listener to think about this in terms of physical architecture. I look at logging in and out exactly like the deadbolt on the front door of your house.
That is the perfect mental model. You would never leave your physical front door wide open when you go to sleep.
No, never.
You wouldn't invite the entire neighborhood to walk in, look at your messy room, and judge your leftovers.
Exactly.
Your digital profile contains your private conversations, your banking details, your photos. When you log out, you are actively establishing a psychological and digital boundary. You are slamming the front door shut and locking it.
Which brings us to how we move things in and out of the secure house. The directional verbs upload and download.
The prepositions here, up and down, are not arbitrary. They give us a mental map of how native speakers visualize the architecture of the internet.
Think about where the internet lives in our collective imagination.
We call it the cloud. It is above us. It is ethereal, public, and vast.
So when the instructors say download means copying files from the internet to your device, the down implies gravity.
Exactly. You are reaching up into the public cloud and pulling a piece of data, a song, a PDF, a movie, down into your private physical possession. It enters your personal device. It becomes yours.
Right.
Upload is the exact inverse. You are taking something from your secure private possession, like a photograph on your phone, and pushing it up out of your device into the massive public sphere of the cloud for everyone to see.
So understanding these words isn't just about knowing which button clicks to save a file. It's about understanding the physical trajectory of your digital footprint.
It completely grounds the invisible internet in physical reality. Up is public, down is private.
Okay, so we've interacted with the digital void, we've managed the physical chaos of the home, we've navigated the egos in the office.
We've been everywhere.
But how does doing all of this day in and day out actually make us feel? It's time to turn our focus inward. Describing an action is one thing, but expressing your internal emotional state to another human being requires incredible precision.
This is a crucial pivot for anyone trying to master a language. If you can only describe external events, you are just a reporter.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
If you want to build deep, empathetic relationships, you have to be able to accurately describe your internal weather. The source provides 3 specific emotional states to examine: excited, annoyed, and frustrated.
We'll touch on excited briefly. The instructors describe it as high positive energy, enthusiastic anticipation for a trip or a party. It's the universal feeling of looking forward to something.
Very straightforward.
But where I really want to spend our time is unpacking the massive, critical difference between the 2 negative emotions, annoyed and frustrated.
Oh, yes.
Non-native speakers use these interchangeably all the time, and it causes so much confusion.
It does, because the physiological response can feel similar. Your heart beats a little faster, you might frown, but psychologically they are entirely different environments.
Let's look at how the instructors define them. They describe annoyed as a mild negative feeling caused by something small, like loud music next door or a delayed train.
So an annoyance is an external irritant. It's like a mosquito buzzing in your ear.
A mosquito.
The mosquito is bothering you. The loud music is distracting you. But, and this is the key, your core ability to function has not been stopped.
Right.
The music is annoying, but you can still cook your dinner. The train is delayed, but you can still read your book while you wait. You're simply wishing an external stimulus would go away. It is a passive state of irritation.
Now contrast that with frustrated. The source defines this as feeling upset or impatient because of an inability to achieve something, like when an app won't work, or you literally cannot get a jar open.
Frustration is an active state of being blocked. It contains high tension. You have a goal. You have the energy and the desire to execute that goal.
Like getting the jar open.
You want the jar open to make a sandwich. You need the app to work to pay your bill. But a barrier is completely stopping your forward momentum. You are trapped. The source uses a brilliant phrase, a feeling of being stuck.
So let's put this into a real-world scenario for the listener to show why getting this right matters. Imagine you are trying to write an urgent email to your boss, and your laptop keyboard suddenly stops working.
Okay, stressful.
Very. If you turn to your friend and say, "I am so annoyed by my computer," what does your friend hear?
Your friend hears that your computer is causing a mild external irritation. Maybe the fan is humming too loudly or the screen brightness is giving you a headache.
Right, because annoyed implies a minor inconvenience.
Exactly. And because of that, your friend's empathetic response will be minor. They might just shrug and say, yeah, technology is annoying sometimes, and go back to watching TV.
They will not offer to help.
No, because you haven't signaled that you are in a crisis.
But if you turn to them and say, "I am so frustrated with this computer right now,"
everything changes. The word frustrated is a flare gun for empathy. It signals that you are actively struggling against a barrier and you are losing. You are stuck.
Oh, wow.
When a native speaker hears the word frustrated, their psychological response is to step in and troubleshoot. Your friend will likely put down the TV remote, walk over and say, "What's wrong? Let me look at the keyboard. Do you need to borrow my laptop?"
Wow. So the specific vocabulary you choose directly dictates the level of support and empathy you extract from the people around you.
It's not about passing a grammar test. It's about getting your human needs met.
Absolutely. Accurate emotional vocabulary is the ultimate tool for connection.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, using precise emotional words helps the listener deeply connect with native speakers.
Armed with this emotional clarity, our conversational detours, and our ability to soften professional blows, you, the listener, are completely prepped.
You are ready.
You are ready to step outside the safe boundaries of your home and your office. It is time to interact with the broader physical world. It is time to navigate the unpredictable, chaotic environment of the city streets.
The final frontier of our everyday vocabulary journey involves commerce, navigation, and survival in the public sphere.
The Urban Explorer section.
Right. The source gives us 3 highly practical, highly versatile phrasal verbs: check out, take a look, and run out of.
Phrasal verbs are notoriously terrifying for learners because they combine a simple verb with a preposition to create an entirely new, often illogical meaning.
They can be a nightmare to memorize.
Let's look at checkout. The instructors note that it has two completely different meanings depending purely on where you are standing. First, to look at something interesting. Check out that new restaurant.
And second,
The act of paying at a store, the literal checkout counter.
context is king here. The environment dictates the definition. If you are walking down the sidewalk, pointing across the street, checkout is an invitation to observe.
It carries enthusiastic energy.
Exactly. Check out that sports car. But the second you step inside a supermarket and put a basket of groceries on a conveyor belt, checkout transforms into a financial transaction. You are finalizing a process.
And this leads to a really subtle distinction the source makes between checkout and take a look.
Yes.
They define take a look as looking at something quickly or briefly. Take a look at my homework, or a friendly salesperson saying, take a look at our new products. Why wouldn't the salesperson just say, check out our new products?
It comes down to conversational pressure. Take a look is softer. It is low stakes.
Low stakes. Okay.
When you ask a colleague to take a look at your presentation, you are minimizing their request. You are implying it will only take a second of their time.
You aren't asking them to review it for an hour.
Right. And when the salesperson says, take a look, they are trying not to scare you away. They are saying, just browse. No pressure to buy.
I see.
If they aggressively yelled, check out these products, it feels demanding. Take a look lowers the temperature of the interaction.
That nuance is incredible, but my absolute favorite phrase in this entire urban survival section is run out of.
It's so versatile.
The Force defines it as using all of something until absolutely nothing is left. And the two examples they give perfectly capture the wildly varied stakes of existing in a city. Emily says, we ran out of bread.
A classic domestic shortage. It is a mild inconvenience. You sigh, you put on your shoes, and you walk down to the corner store. Your life is not in danger.
Exactly. But then Paul drops a second example. I ran out of gas on the way to work.
Which is an absolute logistical
A
night.
total disaster. You are stranded on the shoulder of a highway with cars flying past you at 70 miles an hour. You are going to be late. You might need a tow truck. It is a crisis.
A huge crisis.
And yet, the English language uses the exact same three words, run out of, to describe both the missing toast and the vehicular emergency.
It is the great equalizer of phrasing. And it doesn't just apply to physical items.
True.
You can run out of time on a test. You can run out of patience with a rude customer. You can run out of energy at the end of a long week.
It's a universal framework.
It is a universal framework for describing a deficit. And being able to articulate that deficit clearly, whether it's abstract or physical, is essential for getting the help you need in a busy, indifferent city.
So let's bring this all full circle. Look at the massive amount of ground we've covered in this deep dive.
We really went everywhere.
We didn't just read a dictionary. We started by exploring how native speakers protect fragile egos and maintain workplace harmony by using shock-absorbing words like actually, probably, and sort of.
Then we analyzed the invisible steering wheel of casual conversations using guess what to artificially manufacture excitement.
We took scenic detours with, by the way, and used anyway to safely exit a phone call without ruining a friendship.
We unpacked the endless looping cycle of roommate survival generating messy chaos, eating leftovers to save our precious time, and finding casual ways to fix the things that inevitably break.
Then we mapped the physical boundaries of the digital world, logging out to lock our virtual front doors, and visualizing data moving up to the public cloud and down to our private devices.
We explored the deep psychological divide between a mild external annoyance and an active blocking frustration, and saw how choosing the right word acts as a flare gun to trigger empathy.
And finally, we navigated the contextual minefield of the public sphere, learning how to politely ask someone to take a look without pressuring them, and how to declare an emergency when we run out of vital resources.
It's a massive toolkit for everyday survival.
But, as the instructors in our source material emphasize at the end of their lesson practice makes perfect,
It really does.
these little keys do not do you any good if they just sit in a notebook gathering dust. You have to put them in the ignition. Don't wait until you have perfectly formulated a massive, grammatically flawless sentence in your head.
Just try it out.
Just throwing a light, breezy, actually, or a casual, by the way, into your very next conversation. Observe what happens. Watch how the other person reacts. Notice how the tension in the room shifts.
It will completely change how you communicate.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with something much deeper to chew on.
It raises a fascinating philosophical question, building off everything we've dissected today.
Oh, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
We've spent the last hour analyzing how native English speakers constantly use words like kind of, and actually to soften their reality, to protect the feelings of the people around them, and to avoid seeming too direct or confrontational.
Right.
It makes you wonder, when you spend years learning to speak a new language naturally, absorbing all of its built-in cultural politeness, its specific ways of hedging the truth, and its unique emotional distinctions, does it actually start to change your personality?
Wow.
Does mastering the English language make you navigate the world and treat other people slightly differently than you do when speaking your native tongue?
That is profound.
Think about that the next time you catch yourself naturally saying, actually, I'm sort of busy.
I absolutely love that. It forces you to realize that you aren't just memorizing vocabulary. You might be adopting a whole new persona.
You really might be.
Thank you so much for coming on this deep dive with us today. Keep exploring the hidden mechanics of your conversations. Keep questioning how language shapes the world around you, and keep empowering your English.
Thanks for listening.
Remember, the goal is never a flawless textbook translation. The goal is finding those little keys to unlock genuine human connection. We'll catch you on the next one.